All right, greetings. Here we are. We are at the power rankings time of the week where I post my power rankings and everybody tells me what's wrong with them. And not a lot of movement this week. There are a couple of teams that took a steep dive. There's one that took a dive of 7, one that took a dive of 5, one that took two that took dives of 5 spots, one took a dive of 4. There's one that rose by 5, one rose by 6. And then a couple others that were 4 and 3. So not huge movement, which is what I intended when I changed how I did my power rankings. Number 31, you'll see, is the Excalibur Hotel. It is a place that my wife and I stayed when we were in Vegas for Christmas week. It's a nice little globe there. You see that? They're 31 because at 32 are the Anaheim Ducks in a league of 31 teams. It's a drop of 1 spot, and since I could only drop them 1 spot, I decided not to have them 31st. They have the worst goal differential in the league. They are now last in the West, and it is disturbing that they've lost 19 out of 21 games. Their GM has flown home. He was over in Europe. He's flown home, and there's some speculation that maybe now they're finally going to do something. It's too late. It's too late. They have too many teams to jump past. I'm shocked that they've just thrown a season away like this. Number 30, dropping 1 spot from last week. The plucky, but ultimately not quite ready for primetime players of the Detroit Red Wings. I like the Wings. I do. I think they have a decent core. I think they have a good future. The present, not so much. But again, they have a good future. They've got some good prospects, and they're going to get a good prospect in the draft with where they're going to finish in the regular season. Number 29, moving up 2 spots from last week. Kabam! Shablamos. The Ottawa Senators are no longer 31st. They move up 2 spots this week, and again, they don't have anything to lose. They're playing very loose, and they're playing with some confidence to their game. They're playing quite well. And I considering their standing in the league and all, but their goal differential is a negative 29. Anaheim is a negative 55. So yeah, if you feel like, wow, Anaheim just seems to be getting killed every night, you're right. You're 100% correct. And Ottawa, showing some signs of life. Number 28, dropping 5 spots from last week. The clearly we've decided we're not good enough New Jersey Devils, who have packed it in for the year. And it's the only way that I can look at some of the roster moves they're making, that they're saying, you know what, even if we kept Blackwood up and we went for it, we're still not going to end up making it anyways. So why drag the kid through that? And they're getting ready for next year. I'll be interested to see when Taylor Hall comes back how things turn out with the New Jersey Devils, how that changes things for them. Number 27, dropping 2 spots from last week, the Arizona Coyotes. They got a big win today, which hurt Dallas' standing on this chart, because it reminded me of a lot of things with Dallas on the road that make me very, very nervous. But Arizona had a rough week prior to that win. They were in the bottom row, and then that win brought them out of it today. Being down with the struggling teams, they're struggling. And with Arizona, it really is. It's a lack of the guns you need up front to win. Now, if Galchenyuk, with that 3 points today, if he can show that kind of explosive scoring, not just, a couple points here, empty netter there, a couple points. Yeah, he's got, 8 points over 8 games. Look at this. If he can show some kind of explosive leadership scoring like when he was drafted, it was expected he would, then Arizona's got something going for him, because Clayton Keller is ice cold. So they need to go with somebody else. That said, let's go to number 26, staying in the same spot as last week as Edmonton. And, they looked ready to break their way up. They beat Minnesota. Now they got this game against San Jose. If they could beat San Jose, they could be up in the... Didn't happen. So for me, Edmonton is still in the right spot. And 26 is where they reside. And the 5-2 loss against San Jose. I understand that San Jose. I know how well the Sharks are playing. But, at the end of the day, without the results, I can't bump Edmonton up. Anyways, number 25, moving up 2 spots from last week. So switching spots with the Arizona Coyotes is Florida. On the basis of Florida's won a couple of games, and again, Florida's a team that if they had the consistent goaltending, you could see them contending for a playoff spot. And it's a frustrating refrain that seems to happen every year with Florida, that they start out slow, and then when the games are basically they don't mean a whole lot, that's when Florida starts playing really well. So Florida makes their way up to 25th. That being said, let's move up to number 24. Down 5 spots from last week is Colorado. 6 losses in a row will do that to you. Colorado Avalanche are not able to hold leads. There's a lot of confidence issues going on. There's goaltending issues. And they're a team that's flirting with dropping out of this race in the West, especially if St. Louis continues their push, if Vancouver continues to be decent as well. Colorado may find themselves just completely out of it. And that would be a shame that, Colorado, a team that was a kind of a one-hit wonder a few years back when they made the playoffs and dropped out, if they did it again. That would be a shame. But again, and we talked a lot last year about the, Joe Sakic was redeemed by the playoff appearance by Colorado. What does this do, though, if they don't make it? Does the draft redeem them? If they get Hughes from Ottawa and they get another top prospect with their own pick, what does that do? Like, it's interesting because we look at bad GMs and good GMs. Pierre Dorian 1 year is a good GM, the next year is a bad one. Marc Bergevin, bad GM. This year, nobody's saying that because Montreal's one of the better teams in the league. Just thinking about stuff. Number 23, down 1 spot is Vancouver. They were down more than that. The win over Calgary tonight allowed them to go back up to 23. It was a rough week for Vancouver coming home, and playing against the Flames will help. They had 3 losses this week, and the 2 on the East Coast, and then of course the overtime loss in Chicago, and they win tonight over Calgary. So it almost evens out, but for me, I dropped them 1 spot. I think I've had them in the right position most of the year. It's interesting because they are still technically in the race for the West, but so are a lot of these teams that have got down in this point. At this point, number 22, moving up 6 spots from last week, LA. Yeah, the Kings. Now, they lost in overtime today in Boston, but they forced that overtime, and they had won 3 in a row coming into that game. So, for me, the Kings are playing like they really think they can get back into this. And the interesting thing is that when I watch, these insiders talk about which teams are selling and which ones aren't, they talk about, oh yeah, with the Kings they'll be selling and all these guys will be available, and I'm thinking, but will they? If the Kings could have a miraculous run and somehow find their way into the playoffs, home dates in the playoffs make a ton of money. And, it's for that reason that you see teams trying to desperately get into the playoffs, even if it's only the first round, because those gate receipts at the first round and the concessions and the parking and everything else adds up to a lot of money. So I'll be interested to see what the Kings do. I think when they sold off Muzzin, I think they went, all right, we're sellers. But since losing Muzzin, they seem to have gotten better. And Muzzin's made the Leafs better, so everybody seems to be happy from that one. Number 21, in the same spot as last week, is Buffalo. Again, they had the win today. It was over Detroit, but they avoided the trap. So, in general, they stay in the same spot. They've had their struggles, but maybe the win over Detroit is a start of something more in the positive direction. Maybe the loss to Carolina finally snaps things for them, and they finally get things going, right? Buffalo is one of those teams I'm really curious about what they're going to do for the rest of the year. Are they dead in the water? Are they not going to make it? Or are they actually going to be serious and make it? Number 20, moving up 4 spots from last week, are the Blackhawks, who are showing that they're serious about making a run as well. Again, this is why when I hear about rentals and who Chicago's going to sell at the deadline, part of me says, well, if Stan Bowman is serious about making the playoffs, they're not selling anybody. And I haven't heard Chicago say, well, we're clearly rebuilding. They haven't sent any letter to their season ticket holders. So yeah, Chicago is legitimately in this. And when you've got Kane and Taves and DeBrincat, and if Sod's bought into this as well, and Strome fits in so well with DeBrincat, which is what they were hoping for when they traded for him, they've got the guns. The question then becomes the defense, and does Delia hold up as the starter? I don't want them going back to Crawford as the starter. I think that would be a horrible idea. He started really hot. By the time that the second concussion hits, because he was coming back from the first one, his numbers had really tumbled again. So I honestly, I would rather see, and even though he's taken the ice today and he practiced, the coach was very quick to say there's a lot of stages to coming back from a concussion. He may feel great, and we're glad he feels great, but there are a lot of hurdles to clear, and I really think there's some concern, because there has to be. He is not a young kid anymore, and he's been out now since mid-December, so we're coming up on 2 months again, and that's concerning right there. With each concussion, the following concussion is far easier to get and can be far more severe. So I really think he should consider hanging up the skates, but that's me. Chicago's already said if he gets medically cleared, they'll play him, so we'll see. Number 19, dropping one spot from last week, the hot and cold Rangers, who managed to come back and beat the Bruins, which was nice of them, I guess. But yeah, the Rangers, they're kind of playing out the string. I expect them to sell off at the deadline, and then I expect their record to kind of nosedive. That happened last year at the end of the year. Last power rankings I did at the end of the year, the end of the regular season last year, I think they were like 27th or 28th. And it was based on just they had absolutely died after the trade deadline. Number 18, down 5 spots from last week, is Minnesota. So Minnesota gets the win today, which is good. But the Minnesota's showing some cracks. The loss of Mikko Koivu is huge potentially. Eriksson Ek, can he hold it together? What's going to happen with Minnesota? I have tremendous concern with Minnesota, so I have them down in this position, and in part because there's one team in particular that passed them this week. Let's see, yeah, there's 2 teams that actually passed them this week that they were ahead of last week based on the fact these 2 teams are really hot. So while a drop of 5 spots looks really dramatic, it's always 2 things, and this is what I try to tell people with the power rankings. It's not just one team playing badly necessarily, it's just that team's playing at whatever level, and they're getting passed by other teams that are playing at a higher level. At a higher level, moving up 3 spots from last week, I'm guardedly optimistic about St. Louis. So they move up to 17th from last week's spot of 20th. And of course, that was a jump from the week before. I've got it all written down here. That was a jump of 2 spots from the week before. The week before that, they were 23rd. And week before that, they were 28th. They were 30th. So they've gone from, it's been a gradual climb. Every week they go up. This week they're at 17th. How much further can that climb go? A lot of wins in a row. This is their first big winning streak, so kept bumping them up. Again, with the way that I do the power rankings now, it's going to be more guarded when somebody moves up. But St. Louis looks like they want to make the playoffs. Number 16, dropping 4 spots from last week. My concern is back. The game against Arizona, a lot of concern there, and just overall the play of Dallas, I'm not sold on the depth. One guy that stands out for me with Dallas when he plays is Gurianov. Gurianov has a lot of talent, but he doesn't seem to have the finish. So it's one of those things that when I watch him, he usually makes a highlight reel play, except the highlight reel finish isn't there for it. So he's one of many, but he's a guy who seems to have that high-end skill level. And also then Nichushkin is constantly frustrating me. But anyways, I go on little tirades about Nichushkin. If anybody asks me about it on Discord or just in general, a lot of money to no goals. Anyway, so Dallas is in 16th and 15th spot, dropping 1 spot from last week. The Capitals. The Capitals are, again, that loss in overtime against Florida. The wins, the loss. It feels like they're 1 up, 1 down, and I have some concerns with Washington right now, and so they're still in this spot. And yet, are they going to make the playoffs? Yeah. Were they in this spot at this point last year? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were. I'm pretty sure last year's power rankings at this point, I had Washington meandering between 11th and 15th, and I talked about how, this year it just doesn't look like it's there, and then they won the Stanley Cup. So where you are in February doesn't say where you're going to be in April. Number 14, moving up 3 spots from last week, Philly. Undefeated in regulation in their last 10. The Philadelphia Flyers showing a lot of moxie, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, only because they're in the East. If they were in the West, yeah. But the amount of ground you have to cover, and then just when you look at the other teams in the East, I don't think their roster is strong enough to necessarily knock out. I mean, you've got Carolina, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus all ahead of them, and you have to knock down 3 of those teams, and I'm not sure that long-term Philly's going to be able to do it. Hey, Carter Hart's been a miracle worker so far. Could absolutely prove me wrong. But Philadelphia up to 14th. Pretty solid week for them. Number 13, dropping 7 spots this week. And you know, it's too bad because Pittsburgh, I thought they played well against Tampa. They came up short, and I have tremendous concern with Pittsburgh. Now, the injury to Matt Murray, Murray's numbers had been kind of down lately anyways. He's down to a .909 save percentage, but DeSmith's numbers are down now as well. And which means one of two things. If you're going to say, well, their goaltending's been fine, then it's the blue line. And the blue line has been kind of talked about, bantered about with the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. What's interesting to me is that Alexiak goes to Dallas, and then their defense just... And I know there's injuries going on there as well. Justin Schultz is supposed to be close. We'll see what happens with him in the lineup playing healthy. But for right now, Pittsburgh, yeah. Could they fall out of the playoffs? Maybe. Buffalo and Carolina are 2 teams that could say, well, if you don't want it, take it. Number 12. Moving up 3 spots from last week, so almost back to where they were. Columbus. A road trip did them tremendous good this week. The Columbus Blue Jackets right now look like they want to be in the playoffs. Panarin's playing very well. Bobrovsky, his numbers are still kind of poor, but there's no reason to panic when you're winning every game on the road. There's no reason to panic when you're in a good position to make the playoffs. And that's why I would not be surprised to see, after the deadline, Panarin and Bobrovsky both still members of the Blue Jackets. Unless you can get an absolute mint for these guys, I don't see why you move them. Bobrovsky, maybe. But Panarin, no, he's the heart and soul. He's the heart and soul of their forward group. For the most part, Atkinson's been pretty fantastic too. And Dubois eventually will be their MVP. But, yeah, Panarin just, he's so slick out there. Offensively, he's so slick. Number 11, moving up 5 spots from last week. I'm begrudgingly putting Boston kind of back where they were. But the loss today dropped them a bit. They had actually been up to 10th. And I had to drop them back today. Or no, they didn't lose today, but the game against LA was enough that I dropped them down. So Boston, they're the highest ranked team of the teams I cheer for, and yet I don't look at Boston right now and say, Stanley Cup contenders? They definitely need another forward, and it wouldn't hurt to pick up another defenseman. And I'm not sure if Sweeney's going to sell the future at the deadline again. I really hope he doesn't. I don't want to see another first-round draft pick go. I really, really don't. I'm not going to be happy if Boston trades another first-rounder. Last year, I was like, that's fine. This year, I'd really rather they didn't. And it's weird because this year's draft isn't considered as deep, but I really would rather they didn't. So, the Boston Bruins are up to 11th. It's kind of a begrudging 11th. And we'll see where things go for them this week. Number 10, also moving up a spot this week, is Vegas. Vegas had a solid road trip, and winning in Tampa is not a small feat. And whether you agree with penalties that were taken in that game or not, they won the game, and it's not a small feat. So Vegas played well, and then they come home and they lose tonight against Columbus. So, you know, which one, with the real Golden Knights, please stand up. So I have them in 10th. Am I necessarily feeling that they're going to end up there by the end of the year? I don't know. The one thing I did before I posted tonight's power rankings was I looked at the overall standings in the NHL. And I didn't look at the wild card races or anything. I just looked at the league from 1 through 31. And I looked at records, recent records, and I said, you know what, I'm okay with this. So I didn't make any I made a couple of minor adjustments. I didn't make any major adjustments. And the one thing that I've noticed when I look at other power ranking sites and I look around, I look around, I go, okay, what do these guys think? They really don't move teams around very much based on their record that week. Where if a team goes 3-0, maybe they don't move. Another team goes 0-3, and maybe they stay in first. I actually saw that happen earlier this year, and I'm like, wow, they had a miserable week. Really, you left them in first? Whereas I didn't leave that team in first when they had a miserable week. So it's still probably a little more reactionary than some of the power rankings you'd see online, but it's not that far off. There are a couple. Any power rankings that's posted by a website, I will look and go, oh, that team's way too high, or that team's way too low. Anyways, number 9, moving up one spot from last week, is Nashville. I don't know what to make of Nashville right now, to be honest. One night they look fantastic. The next night, mediocre. Tomorrow against St. Louis is going to tell me a lot. The Blues look like they're ready to make the playoffs. Nashville will make the playoffs, but are they going to be a favorite in that first round when they get there? If St. Louis wins both of a back-to-back with Nashville, I will definitely have to bust St. Louis up higher, and I definitely have to move Nashville down. And then I'd have to figure out and go through, pour over things and say, all right, which teams rightfully should get into that spot. But yeah, so Nashville's there. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that Pittsburgh dropped 7 spots. So because of the drop by Pittsburgh, a lot of teams just move up because Pittsburgh dropped. Otherwise, if Pittsburgh hadn't dropped this week, most of the top 10 would be exactly the same. Moving up one spot to number 8, a good example is Carolina. Good week for Carolina again. They stayed in the top 10. The funny thing was, there was a tweet sent out on Sunday, Carolina loses a game, and somebody said, so because, Shannon put them in the top row on the power rankings, now they're going to start losing all their games. I'm really worried. They didn't. They're still playing very well, and so they move up to 8th this week. They look like they want to make the playoffs. Now, we've said that before. Last year, the year before. So, I don't know if they can get there, but hey, they're in the conversation for playoffs. It's February. They're playing important games. Number 7, dropping 3 spots. 3. That's not a 3. That's 3. Dropping 3 spots from last week is Winnipeg. The Jets with their first 3-game losing streak of the year. And tomorrow's going to tell me whether or not I bump them down. So, yeah, we'll see, right? Winnipeg, I've had some concerns about and again, when you're up at the top of the league, you're going to go through periods where you don't look great. It's just what happens. You're not going to have necessarily the intensity of the team you're playing against. The game is more important to them. They're more fired up. So, for Winnipeg, to me, it looks like they have to rediscover that fire, that thing that, got them to first place in the division. And at the trade deadline, I think they've got some big decisions to make because of the salary cap crunch that's coming. I think there's some big decisions they're going to have to make, and I think this is where Kevin Cheveldayoff earns his money. This is where he shows why he's one of the best GMs in the league. Whatever he does at the deadline, we'll see. Number 6, moving up one spot from last week. I told you guys, a lot of moving up one spot. Montreal. Yes. Montreal coming into tonight was top 5. If you're a Habs fan, you were waiting for them to be top 5. They were top 5 before today. They drop out of top 5 because the team moved up 3 spots and passed them tonight, and that's Toronto. So, with that victory, Toronto just switched spots with Montreal. Moved up to number 5. Toronto moved up 3 spots on the week, and guess what? They've won 4 in a row. They're quietly getting better again. It is interesting because it's a different hero, it seems, almost every night for Toronto. And that, to me, makes them very, very dangerous come playoff time. Because who are you shutting down? Can Montreal shut them down? I would love to find out in round 1. I would love for the hockey gods to deliver us that series in the first round. Because I'd kind of have to do live streams. Not for my reaction to the game, but just because the chat would be absolutely epic on that live stream. Just to see Toronto and Montreal fans. Probably be a lot of arguing going on in that live stream. But yeah, so Toronto's number 5, Montreal's number 6. We'll see next week if they're up right next to each other. Number 4, dropping one spot from last week, is the Islanders. It's not that the Islanders had a bad week. It's that there was a team that had a fantastic week. And so the Islanders, they're still top 4. And they had a comeback from 2 goals down against Colorado. The Islanders right now do look like they're going to be the number 1 team in the Metro. It'd be very, very interesting to see what they do in the playoffs. Remember, the Islanders don't have a great playoff history over the last 20-plus years. So what this team does in the playoffs this year could show what a genius Barry Trotz is. Not that his genius is in question right now with the fact that they're in this conversation in the first place. He's masterful. Lou Lamoriello's been masterful with the roster. They reacted perfectly to the loss of John Tavares, just saying, oh, we didn't win with them, so it's fine. And making sure that they showed their fans, whether they meant it or not, that they didn't see it as a big deal that Tavares went to Toronto. And right now I have them ahead of Toronto in the power rankings. So for Islander fans, they have that. Number 3, dropping one spot from last week as well, is the Flames. Jacob Markstrom made that happen. That's what happened. The Flames, it's not that they had a bad week, but they did lose at home against San Jose. And, and then they lose on the road against Vancouver. And again, Markstrom stole that game. But the loss at home against San Jose, and just looking at where the standings are and looking at what San Jose did tonight and what Calgary did tonight, I had to make a decision between where the teams would lie. And then I had to look at number 1 and go, well, Tampa, have they done enough this week to justify being number 1 still? I think they have. I know that doesn't sound very, very certain, but I'm being as diplomatic as possible. If you watch the game between them and Pittsburgh, they are still the best team in the league right now. Are there concerns? Sure. Is it reasonable that you're going to have some kind of a lull around this time of year? Absolutely. They're at 84 points. They are so far ahead of everybody else. And again, much like with Winnipeg that I was talking about earlier, a team can come in and the game's really, really important to them. I think about Vegas. The Vegas-Tampa game's a good example of it just felt like it was more important to Vegas than Tampa in the end, and that may have made a big difference. I still think Tampa's the best team in the league. And San Jose, they're right there. If Tampa has, I'm going to tell you guys right now, if Tampa has another week where they're kind of mediocre, like if tomorrow they lose to Florida, San Jose goes to number 1. No questions asked. If Tampa goes into Florida and they lay an egg in Florida tomorrow, then the number 1 team tomorrow night would be the San Jose Sharks. The thing is, I don't do the power rankings every day. That would be a horrible idea. Not going to happen. But there you go. Your power rankings for this week. And now I've got to change something. All right, so once again, to try to explain the reasoning here. Now, I was as surprised as anybody today to find out that the Anaheim Ducks have been officially disbanded as a team. They cease operations immediately, and the Beatles are now number 1 on the power rankings, based on the fact that apparently they're going to be the team that takes over for the... I'm not sure how this is going to work. There's some kind of cloning that was involved. There are multiple Johns and Ringos. I'm not sure why there aren't multiple Georges and Pauls. But anyways, I have great faith that it's going to work. And if you look, they're not even wearing shoes. So there's some debate about whether or not they're actually going to wear skates. It's very, very interesting. Vegas is at number 2. They are the entertainment capital of the world. The Rangers, of course, city that never sleeps. Toronto's the center of the universe. Washington has to be high or else they can kill me. And I don't mean the people, I mean government. Number 6 is the Oilers, because Gretzky was fantastic, right? So they have to still be good. And number 7, I have Ottawa, because that's actually Canada's nation's capital, and that's the only way that I can get that into a video. Where, I'm talking about it. Tampa's at 31 because black accelerator reasons. I had somebody ask what a black accelerator looked like. This is a black accelerator jersey. This is my Vancouver Canucks. Daniel Sedin. You'll notice that the logo is gray on the shoulder. The jersey's completely black. The logo's got like gray and white and there's a little green on it. That's a black accelerator. And that's what Tampa's thirds remind me of, so they fall down to dead last. Winnipeg's down here because they're not in Canada, and Calgary because they're Vancouver's #1 rival, so I had to drop them down. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.